Welcome to the NWI.com Political Roundtable for Thursday, February 20th. I'm Robert Blaskowitz, Assistant Managing Editor of The Times. Join with me today Doug Ross, Editorial Page Editor of The Times, and Times Assistant Managing Editor Krista Zivanovic. Let's jump right in with some interesting things going on down at the State House. First of all, it looks like this big Governor Pence's plan for a business tax cut looks like it's going to be put off, maybe looked at in the summer study session. What kind of happened there with that? We had an interesting story over the weekend looking at it.
Yeah, I think that I thought they were going to. It had been narrowed from 100 million down to about 20 million, 30 million, and then they also were going to make it up to the counties if they wanted to use it as an incentive. And I think that I think everybody just looked at the budget and realized that the revenue is not meeting projections, and I think they decided maybe they should wait till it's actually a budget year, and so they put it to a study committee for the summer.
And our State House reporter Dan Carden had a story over the weekend that some of Governor Pence's claims regarding the business tax in neighboring states didn't exactly add up. Governor Pence pointed to Illinois not having a business
that they got
tax.
rid of theirs 10 or 15 years ago, and in fact, they immediately, when they got rid of that tax, had a substitute tax.
They replaced it.
So that, and they actually, the replacement was very creative. They did it in such a way that it didn't really harm, and that it actually helped schools and some other agencies. And the same with Michigan. They're looking to get rid of it, or they already have, but they also came up with a replacement right at the same time that wasn't harmful to homeowners.
So Doug, maybe
maybe
those in the legislature that have to actually balance the books that have that responsibility, maybe they felt that they were being sold a false bill of goods.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Governor Pence said he didn't want to, and his exact words were unduly harm Hoosiers, and there's really no way to subtract that whopping amount of money from the state without having a replacement.
Right. And when he was asked for details repeatedly...
That's what I was going to say. There was one day when he had a press conference, and every single State House reporter from every media outlet in the state pushed him for an embarrassingly long time, 10 or 15 minutes. Yeah. And he remained very cagey and very
Well, his philosophy is that he's the executive of the state, and so he sets the broad overarching ideas, and it's up to the minions or in this case the legislature to implement them. And
fortunately our legislators, even the fiscal conservatives, both Democrat and Republican, realize long after the governor's gone, they still have to govern, and they have to deal with the budget constraints that we have and the surplus that they'd like to maintain. So I think that's why they're standing their ground.
I think we're certainly seeing some fractures between the Republicans in the legislature and the governor's mansion that we didn't see in the Mitch Daniels administration.
Yes.
A couple other subjects we want to get to real quickly. Common Core, very interesting. The committee handling that bill to basically halt implementation of Common Core, they passed that, and they will forward that to the full legislature for a vote, whether to halt the program.
It looks like it's going to be halted. Yeah. Glenda Ritz is in favor of it, too. So now it took 3 years to implement. And Carmen wrote a story, our education reporter Carmen McCullen wrote a story a couple of weeks ago, that it will be very expensive to now reverse that and go back to a new thing. And a lot of the school administrators, many who don't even like Common Core, said, let's deal with it. We've got it. We're used to it. It's stringent, but we can deal with it. They are concerned that now it's going to take another 3 to 5 years to come up with new tests, thousands more dollars. And Carmen chronicled how much money, several million, 20 million or 24 million, I think was her figure.
And this is, I think a lot of this goes back to the idea that, people don't want the federal government dictating this without realizing it wasn't the federal government dictating.
It was governors, governors and educators who worked together. And it was the Republican governor, Mitch Daniels, and Tony Bennett, who put it in place. So.
Right.
Yeah. Let's kind of put a bow on the whole gay marriage, since that kind of came to an end with a whimper this week. After kind of a roar of Mike Delph over the weekend on Twitter, kind of lashing out at those who wouldn't go along with the plan to put back the second sentence in the amendment that would get it on the ballot for this year. fallout from there.
Well, Mike Delp's idea and the hardcore conservatives that he represents, their idea is without a ban against civil unions, you're going to have legislation that is going to be really hard to defend. I mean, putting it in the Constitution, it'll be struck down more easily, they think, and it doesn't, go to their,
Do you mean less easily? It'll be struck down less easily?
Well, no, they want that prohibition against civil unions in there too, so that they, get their case, locked in granite in their minds, and they're concerned that if they don't do it now, they might never do it, because who knows what these quote unquote activist judges will say.
And because the amendment was changed, the sentence was taken out, it resets the clock. They have to come back in the next session in 2016 and pass it again.
Without the second sentence.
Right,
though.
right.
So if they want to put the second sentence back in, then they have to wait again.
They would have to reset the clock again. So is it pretty much over? I mean, is this it?
It might be, because you've seen in recent weeks, while this debate was raging, Kentucky and Virginia judges, federal judges, I don't know about the Virginia judge, but the Kentucky judge was appointed by George H.W. Bush, so I call him activist or not. They both struck down the same kind of constitutional amendment Kentucky and Virginia had.
I don't see how this doesn't come before the Supreme Court before those 2 years. So I think it'll be.
But keep in mind that the Supreme Court is a pretty conservative court. I mean, they're not doing the broad declarations.
It's a split court, and Anthony Kennedy, who's that swing voter, he has in the past sided on the side of equal rights for gays.
And not only that, if you read the opinion, I haven't read the Virginia one, but I did look at the Kentucky opinion. That judge was very academic and formal and careful to lay out his arguments as to why he thought it was unconstitutional, and I think the Supreme Court would have a hard time ignoring his arguments.
Right.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into local issues quickly before we end for the week. Gary School finances, they're seeing a huge deficit, and they're going to have some tough choices. They're about, last year they were 12.2 million in the hole, as I recall, which obviously they're supposed to break even.
And they were more in the hole year before.
They were 23 point something million the year before.
Yeah.
And they cut 166 jobs. Problem is they've still got declining enrollment. They've got competition from charter schools and so forth, and people just moving out, frankly. And so they've got declining enrollment. They're going to have to cut more. They're getting in trouble for not paying teacher pension.
It's paid through December, Superintendent Pruitt said, but she acknowledged it's catch as catch can every month. Sometimes they're behind a month or two.
And really, that needs to be set up. They could face fines of $100 a day if they're more than $30 late on these payments, and they've been months behind.
Yes.
So they've got to get to a system where they could make those payments with every paycheck.
And to Superintendent Cheryl Pruitt's credit, she has been so open, so responsive every time Carmen calls her. And she doesn't say this as an excuse, but she said, I inherited kind of a mess, and she really seems to be doing a good job trying to face these issues head on. Yeah. She also noted, she herself acknowledged that more cuts have to come. With a declining enrollment, they still have too many administrators, too much overhead. She's talked about her concern, a lot of aging buildings, problems with boilers.
And that's one of the prices of charters, is that, you lop off a segment of that district,
that pie,
basically, that pie, and it goes to the charter, and it goes away from the Gary School District, and they're left with what they have, and some severe cuts.
Yes.
What I thought was interesting about this whole discussion this week was the mayor of the civil city, Karen Freeman Wilson, saying, look at all the things I inherited, with the federal government on the city's back over, the sanitary district and this and that and the other thing. And
HUD.
Exactly. Wanting to take over the housing authority. And so, the school district's in pretty much the same shape. So I think Cheryl Pruitt as superintendent and Karen Freeman Wilson as mayor have really jumped in.
I do too. I
attacked
think
it.
that the city and the school city are very lucky. I think they're in very capable hands, and I just hope they can
It's
find
just a
their
big
way
battle.
through.
It's a challenge, certainly. Well, that's all the time we have this week. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back next week with another Political Roundtable.